Unique! Unique! I only curse myself for not being able to understand the hieroglyphs.
Egypt was a land of magic and mystery. It had the pyramids, it had hieroglyphs, it had the Nile. And Romans, they went to Egypt much more often in fantasy, in pictures, by bringing the wild animals of Egypt from Egypt into Rome, hippopotamuses, crocodiles. But some of them, probably on lazy culture trips, went as far as they could, right to the boundaries of Ethiopia.
As travelers abroad marveled at the mysteries of Egypt, Romans back home were hungry for their own taste of the mysterious East. A luxury trade in expensive foreign goods flourished.
There is this exotica that the rich and wealthy came to expect. Perhaps one of the most startling examples would be spices. They came from the Far East, from the islands of Indonesia. Even more than that, we've got a guide written for shippers up the Red Sea on how to cross over using the monsoon to India to pick up goods. And it tells you what you can get in the Yemen, at Bombay, on the southern tip of India, where there may very well have been a colony of Roman citizens.
The Roman delight in far-flung places was not reciprocated. As Rome thrilled to the exotic East was starting to hate Rome's guts. In the provinces and periphery of empire, resentment festered. The great Roman orator Cicero had foreseen it all.
Words cannot express, gentlemen, how bitterly we will be hated among foreign nations because of the outrageous conduct of the men we have sent to govern them. All the provinces are complaining about Roman greed and Roman injustice. I remind you, gentlemen, Rome will not be able to hold out against the whole world. I do not mean against its power and arms in war, but against its groans and tears and lamentations.
From the beginning, Rome had built its empire by conquest and force of arms. In the early days of empire, there had been real benefits to being defeated by Rome. Citizenship, civil rights, trade, and prosperity. But by the 3rd century AD, those benefits were evaporating. Citizenship was giving way to slavery. Peace and prosperity replaced by shameless exploitation.
And for all the wealth that Rome took from Asia, 3 times as much shall Asia take from Rome, visiting upon her accursed arrogance. And for every slave in a Roman house, I swear, 20 Romans will one day be sold into the most wretched slavery.
Rome was sitting on a powder keg of poverty and resentment. In April 248 AD, the Emperor Philip staged the Millennium Games. Rome was 1,000 years old and celebrating its birthday in the only way it knew how. With a grandiose spectacle of ritual, races, and bloodletting. As Romans celebrated, barbarian armies hammered the empire's frontiers. Rebellions were breaking out in the provinces. With their world collapsing into chaos, the Roman thirst for macabre distraction grew. The death toll from the Millennium Festival was spectacular even by Roman standards. 1,000 gladiators and hundreds of exotic animals were killed. Leopards, lions, elephants, giraffes, tigers, hippos, and even a rhinoceros. Noisy crowds paraded statues of the gods through the streets. Priests heaped offerings in front of the temples, praying for a return of Rome's good fortune. Nature itself seemed to be conspiring against the Roman Empire. Climatic changes in Central Asia were freezing the high plateaus and forcing its nomadic peoples to migrate. Shut out of the Chinese lowlands, they had no option but to move west. As they headed for Europe, they pushed all the tribes in their path further west as well. In the 3rd century, wave after wave of uprooted peoples were pushed up against Rome's northeastern frontier. Goths, Slavs, Vandals, and more. In 259 AD, Persians attacked. Rallying to the empire's defense, the Emperor Valerian marched his legions hundreds of miles to confront them. Weakened by illness and exhaustion, they were massacred and the emperor captured. Eager to humiliate the emperor to the maximum, the Persian king used Valerian as a stepping stool to mount his horse. When Valerian died in captivity, the Persians skinned him and hung his hide in a temple for all to see. Rome's humiliation was complete.
Dearest Mother, my greetings. I just want you to know that I finally arrived safe and sound in Alexandria after 4 days' travel. I miss you all already. Tell Io that if he wants to join the army, he should come here. Everybody seems to be joining the army.
As Isis wrote to her mother from Egypt, the disaster of Valerian's defeat had sparked panic throughout the empire. There was a furious recruitment drive. By the year 300, there were almost 500,000 Roman soldiers, and the legions were still growing. The only way to maintain this gigantic military machine was taxation. Taxes rose and inflation spiraled. Roman currency, the denarius, was progressively devalued. Once again, ordinary Romans bore the brunt.
The ordinary person in the late Roman Empire could expect to be taxed more efficiently, more harshly, more often, and more consistently than ever before. Likewise, people realized that in order to safeguard themselves, their families, their livelihoods, that they should join the state. So there's an enormous competition to join the army and join the bureaucracy, all of which confer substantial taxation privileges and immunities.
Taxation would be less brutal if the burden were shared equally by all. It is not. Tributes due from the rich are extorted from the poor, and the weaker bear the burden of the stronger. Ordinary people are being crushed by the weight of taxes. What more can I say? The situation is shameful and disastrous. Salve.
Beset by enemies without and turmoil within, the empire tried desperately to tighten its grip. Along with the army, the whole apparatus of imperial power began to swell. Bureaucracies multiplied. The people who oversaw the postal system, the speculatores, had become the world's first full-fledged intelligence operation. Spies were everywhere, reporting any signs of rebellion in the provinces. Emperors were obsessed with maintaining control. Rome was moving slowly but surely towards the totalitarian regimes that would preside over its final collapse. In 285 AD, realizing the empire was becoming bloated and top-heavy, the Emperor Diocletian embarked on reforms to streamline it. He split the imperial bureaucracies into two linked empires, 2 emperors and 2 armies.